Thank you. Can you share my screen? Can everyone see my screen? Perfect.
You're good.
All right, so my section is reducing your bath and body product waste. My name is Patricia. My preferred pronouns are she and her, and my unofficial titles are bath and body making enthusiast, professional soap maker, and lover of plants. In this quick, 15-minute talk, I'll be talking about some recipes, other products you might consider making, and then how to keep things low waste and other things to consider when making decisions about bath and body products and personal care. So one of my favorite recipes to make is body butter. If you see really close in my video, I'm using a fancy webcam today, but this is one of the body butters I like to use. It's very customizable. It's 50% weight in butters and 50% weight in oils. So the butters can vary with things like shea butter, cocoa butter, depends on what you are able to use, what you're able to purchase, and what is safe on your own skin. And the oils can range from things like olive oil, coconut oil, argan oil, jojoba oil, avocado oil. There's lots of variety. And how I make this is I melt them all in a double boiler. So you can generally use a glass mason jar, something you could recycle. You put in a pot of water and that water heats, and then that indirect heat will melt your oils. And then you let it cool before using it. And depending on what butters and oils you use, the texture can change, the consistency can change a little bit. And depending on how warm your house is, it can also impact how hard or soft your oils is. And this is really great for in the wintertime if your skin's really dry. And what's really fun about making your own product is that you can customize it to your needs. So if you find something too greasy or your skin doesn't like a certain product, you can change it up. But in the later slide, I'm going to chat about how you want to take things slow at the beginning of your journey of creating your own products. You don't want to go too wild. Some people might find this butter quite greasy. You can add arrowroot powder to help cut the grease because it's quite absorbent. That's just one of my favorite recipes. I know a lot of people use lotion. They kind of wonder what the difference between lotion and body butter is. Lotion has a higher percentage of water, and in order to make actual lotion, you have to put a preservative into it. Otherwise, it will go rancid because water is a habitat for bacteria to grow, and you need to add that preservative in order to prevent it from going rancid or spoiling or molding. So lotion's a little bit more of an advanced product to make. Sometimes a body butter is just too buttery and greasy for the summertime because your skin's a little bit more moisturized already. You might not need something as heavy. And another recipe I really enjoyed, this one is from Humblebee and Me. I left the link at the bottom. This is what it looks like. So I purchased these little tubes, but you can always reuse a lip balm tube you have before, or any small container if you don't mind, using your finger to dip in to collect some product. This one's made out of beeswax, coconut oil, cocoa butter, sweet almond oil, and vitamin E. If you do want to make this vegan, there's some other waxes that you can use, like I believe it's pronounced Cannondilla wax. You want to use a little bit less than 10 grams because it is a harder wax to use. And then you can add some essential oils if you like as well. Another warning for making your own bath and body products is that some essential oils will make your skin photosensitive. So citrus essential oils you typically want to avoid in products that will sit on your skin. So grapefruit or orange, those types of essential oils, if you leave them on your skin and go out to the sun can react with that and it can damage your skin. Things like soap or like a face wash, those, because they don't stay on your skin for very long, they don't really absorb into your skin. And so you can use those types of essential oils because they wash off immediately. So other products that are quite easy to make at home, so beard, hair, and face oil. I'm not sure why people have separate products for these types of needs, because they're essentially the same thing. They're a mixture of different oils. So argan oil, jojoba oil, olive oil, avocado oil, it's usually just mixed in, and it's good for beard hair, facial hair, hair on your head, face oil. It's a very versatile product, and people market it as separate products because they want you to buy lots of different types of products. And then another easy product is whipped body butter. So instead of just melting and letting it cool so it's solid, when it's in this medium cooling phase, you can use a hand mixer and mix it up, and it becomes whipped, and it's almost like whipped cream or buttercream. And if you use things like cocoa butter, it smells delicious and also looks delicious. So that might be a little dangerous. Some people also like body butter bars. So if you increase your ratio of hard butters and decrease the amount of the liquid oils, you can actually pour your solution into a silicone mold, and then it'll harden and you can pop it out, and it's like a solid bar. I actually have, this one's from Lush. I was gifted this one. This one's a massage bar, but it's a similar product. Similar ingredients. You melt it, you put it in a mold, and then you can unmold it and use that to moisturize your body. You can also use it as a massage oil as well. You can also make scrubs. They're very straightforward too. There's usually a sugar or salt component. I did make this is a body butter coffee scrub. So similar to a body butter, but then you put coffee grounds in, so it's a little exfoliating. A little goes a long way. You scrub in the shower or the bathtub, and then you wash it off. It's a very luxurious thing to do. And last is face masks. So the face masks that I prefer to use are clay-based ones. And there's a whole plethora of clays out there, but they're very straightforward to make. It's a mixture of some type of clay and then some type of liquid. So it could be witch hazel, it could be glycerin, it could be, some people use things like yogurt or water or rose water. It's very versatile, which makes it super fun. Some more challenging things to make are things like soap. So soap requires an actual chemical reaction. The other products that I have mentioned earlier, you kind of just mix things together and they stay in that state. Whereas when you're making soap, it's a chemical reaction. You're adding fats, you're adding sodium hydroxide, they mix together, it produces a salt, it produces glycerin, and so that reaction produces the soap. But it is a little bit more challenging to make. It's a little bit more dangerous because sodium hydroxide is caustic, which means that it can burn organic matter, and we are organic matter. So if made incorrectly, it could be very harmful. But I love bar soap, and I use it for washing my body, washing my hands. I also don't have to purchase a separate shaving cream. I just use the bar soap, and it works perfectly fine. I've been using my soap for years and years and years, and I've had no problems. Castile soap is also very versatile as well. That you can mix into, you dilute it, and you can use it for cleaning products. You can use it on your skin and your hair as well. When thinking about shampoo bars, depending on your hair type, lots of people call regular soap a shampoo bar, but it's chemically not appropriate for your hair because regular bar soap is quite basic and your hair wants a little bit more acidity. And so actual shampoo bars are not actual soap. It's a combination of different ingredients. And as I mentioned with the lotion before, lotions are higher in water, require preservative. If you don't measure everything accurately, things can spoil really quickly, and you don't want to waste product. And that's part of our zero to low waste journeys, making sure that we're not wasting things. And I personally have a lot of challenges making my own deodorant. I found I haven't made anything that works really well with me. And I find that deodorant is kind of the first thing people try on their natural journey or low waste journey, and it might not be as effective. And so I've tried it. I've tried to love it, and it's never worked out for me. And so I've resorted to commercial deodorant because I don't smell after that. So how can we keep these things low or zero waste when we're making our own products? The first thing I always tell people is use what you have first. If you have things in plastic bottles, that is totally okay. Use that first. You don't want to just throw things away, or you can also give it away to friends or family that might want to use that, but you don't want to be throwing away products that you've already purchased. Other things to note are to buy ingredients in bulk, but buy only what you need. I made the mistake of going really wild and buying so many butters and oils in large quantities because it's cheaper. But now I've had to throw away lots of product because they've spoiled, they smell weird. I realize I'm never going to use this product. I don't like this oil. So start off really small. There are a couple local places that have some bulk ingredients like zero waste bulk. I've seen that they have their oils in big pump jars. And then, but if you are going to be making products with friends or family or other people, you can buy in larger quantities because often there's less packaging, which is something we want to work towards. And then, as I mentioned before, do not buy too many ingredients at the beginning because you don't want to spend too much money on things that you might never use. You also want to be realistic with what you'll actually use. I talked about face masks before, but if you're not a face mask person, you don't need to be making face masks. Next, glitter, colorants, and other pretty things are not necessary. They make things look really good, but oftentimes it'll get stuck in your drains. They get stuck in other places. It's a pain to clean. People claim that their glitter is biodegradable, but we know that biodegradable is a very vague term. It doesn't actually mean very much. If it's compostable, that is much better. And then lastly, I think it's important to acknowledge that many of these products are not made in Canada. So olive oil, avocado oil, cocoa butter, a lot of these ingredients have to be shipped from tropical places. And so even if we're making our own products, we want to be conscientious that, we're saving in these ways. Our carbon footprint's smaller by making our own products, but we're still sourcing ingredients from different parts of the world. Unfortunately, there's very few oils that we can and butters that we can get locally. And lastly, I never want to guilt people into thinking that you have to make all your own products because that's the only way to do things and that's the only way to stay green, etc. Natural isn't always better. The word natural isn't regulated. Asbestos is natural. Doesn't mean it's good for you. There's a lot of greenwashing out there, so you want to be conscientious of that when making decisions. It's also important to acknowledge that everyone's skin is different. Some have more oily skin, some have more skin prone to acne, some people have drier skin, and your skin will also change over time too. And that's totally okay. You want to adapt as the seasons go by and as you get older. And lastly, the internet can be very overwhelming and make lots of claims that are not scientifically supported. So as a soap maker, the only claim I can make about my soap is that it's moisturizing. I can't say it's going to heal your acne, it's going to help with aging. All of those things needs to be backed with testing. So if on the internet they're claiming that if you make this product, it will help with this, that is not tested. In order to test that, you have to send it to a lab to get those tested before you can make those claims. So something else to be very cautious about when buying products. So that takes me to the end of my talk, and I look forward to chatting and learning from the other speakers and chatting and answering questions you may have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patricia. I feel like these 15 minutes each are going to just be packed full of information. So I've got my pen and paper down here and I'm just writing away. Thank you so much for that. We're going to move on to Shefaza now, who is going to be talking about vermicomposting and just about how to reduce waste in the kitchen.
Thank you. So as you said, these 15 minutes are going to be jam-packed, and I know that I have created a PowerPoint that has a lot of information. So please bear with me as I go through it in a fast but okay pace. Let me know if you need me to slow down. So my name is Shefaza. I am an instructor at the University of Waterloo, but before that I was doing my PhD in composting. I wanted to start off with acknowledging the dish with one spoon wampum, which is related to the Southern Ontario area. And the part that I really want to emphasize from this is we all eat out of the dish, and that's what the treaty was for, is to recognize that we are all using the same resources, and therefore we must all be more cognizant of how we use these resources. So this is the treaty in a wampum, and this is the treaty on a map of all the different territories that are part of this treaty. And the reason why I chose that to acknowledge is because we're talking about food in this particular presentation. So according to statistics, households waste about 1,500 worth of food annually in Northern America. So what could you do with $1,500 more per year? Just think of something that you could do with $1,500 more per year. Or let's break it down. What could you do with $125 more per month? And so there is a monetary cost associated with many of the things that end up being wasted. And food waste in Canada or in the northern areas is more so at the consumer side. Yeah, you, rather than any of the other sides, which are smaller percentages. Whereas in the global south, it's more at the production and transportation and storage rather than at the consumer end. So this is very much on us to be able to reduce. Food waste in Canada, there are different kinds. There's avoidable food waste and unavoidable food waste. So what is wasted in Canada are vegetables mostly and fruit. There's also smaller percentages of meat and dairy and bakery, as well as leftovers. So we'll talk more about unavoidable and avoidable food wastes. And the best way to avoid avoidable food waste is really to meal plan and buy only the fresh produce that you need for each week that you are going to plan your meals, and storing fruits and veggies in optimum conditions. And then that way, the 63% of foods that could have been eaten will end up being eaten and not wasted. What I want to focus on in this presentation is actually unavoidable food waste. So I did put in a slide about meat waste, but I generally have a very vegetarian diet. So this is just for folks who do eat meat. Even though meat makes up a smaller proportion of food thrown away, it does account for more carbon emissions because of the decomposition of meat and the production of methane. So the meat of my presentation is unavoidable food waste. And it's generally food that can be sold or eaten, such as bones, vegetable peelings, eggshells, tea bags, and coffee grounds. But you can still do something with these in the household. And one trick I want to share with you today is the making of soup stock from vegetable wastes. So I started doing this about 2 years ago. One of my friends heard about this recipe from Thug Kitchen, which is a really great recipe book. So what you do is you collect all your vegetable wastes. You can freeze these in freezer bags or yogurt containers, put it into a pot and fill the pot with water, and you just let it boil for about an hour. So what I do is I let it get to a boil, so about 15 minutes on high, and then about 45 minutes I lower it and let it simmer at medium-high heat. And after that 1 hour, it's ready. I sieve it and I partition it into freezable jars like mason jars, and then I have soup stock for when it's time to make soup, which is soon. So this in pictures is that process. So you can see I use yogurt containers to put my food waste into. So I put anything like cabbage peels, broccoli stalks, carrot tops, spring onion tops, onion peels. Onion peels make up a more major portion of my soup stock, but really anything can go in there. Zucchini peels. I'd be wary of putting in things that might be bitter, so maybe test the peel before you put it into your soup stock, and then you should be okay with the flavor that comes out in your soup stock. And this is the process that I took pictures of. Once you have your Once you're ready to make soup stock, you put all your frozen veggie scraps into the pot, add your water, and do the boiling. And then you see the color changes from very transparent to like a nice orange. Sometimes it's very red, depending on what kind of veggie scraps you've put in there. And if you have a lot of beet scraps, then it'll be very, very purple and red, which is probably really good for making borscht, I am told. And what I do is I measure out cups, 2 cups per pasta jar, so that I know for when a recipe calls for 2 cups, I have that already on hand. So I sieve out the soup stock and measure it out if necessary or as desired. And then I pour it into my mason jars or my pasta jars. And then what I do with the leftover waste is put it into the compost bin. But I recently heard about the scraps recipe book that's by IKEA. And there's a couple of recipes in that actually use pulp made from soup stock waste. And so I'm eager to try that out. But for right now, I've just been putting it into the compost bin. And yes, that does still contribute to greenhouse gases a little bit, but not as much because you've already taken out most of the nutrients. So the decomposition process will be a little faster. So these are all my soup stock jars and ready for freezing. And I do fill them up, not all the way to the top, because I used to fill them up all the way to the top, even though I am versed in science and I know that water expands when it's frozen. And I did get some broken jars. So I learned that lesson, and I do not fill them up completely anymore. So there's a way to use your scraps in soup stock, but then there are some things that are unavoidable, like when you buy strawberries and there's always that one moldy strawberry, or you have banana peels. And even though I'm looking into more scrap cooking, like using banana peels as a food itself, before that, I used to want to compost my food, and I lived in an apartment where I didn't have access to the green bin program. So many of you might not also have access to green bin services, or even if you do have access to green bin services, you may not be taking advantage of it for various reasons. Can you think of any? Please feel free to type in the chat if you can think of any reasons why residents may not be using the green bin service to full extent. Since you're all here, I'm sure you are all using it. They don't know what they can put in there. Yeah. And I see that you shared the IKEA scrapbooks. Yeah. Maybe it's gross. Sometimes when things are shared, people don't take as much care. Yeah. It's more convenient to dump everything in a bag. Yes, gross is what you meant. Yeah. Or maybe some people have an aversion to food scraps and the stink. Yeah. And even though I did my thesis on composting, and I'm very well versed in making sure that things don't go bad, sometimes I also have that moldy parsley, and I'm like, I just have to put this in the green bin, and I feel gross too. So I can totally get why people would feel that way. And then you have to clean the green bin. There's the one inside, the one outside. It's a lot of work. So instead, we can have worms. So I just repeated the unavoidable and avoidable food wastes again. And in terms of having worms, you can put both unavoidable food waste as well as avoidable food waste. The thing in the back of your fridge that you completely forgot about, and you're like, okay, you know what? I do meal planning, but hey, one or two times there's some things that do go bad, and you can forgive yourself for that. And if you have worms, you can even feel better about it, because not only will the worms decrease your waste footprint, but it will also increase your awareness of your food and waste habits. So worms are also known as engineers of the soil, and earthworms can change the soil ecosystem, which is why when you have worms for your vermicomposting, you want to keep them indoors and not let them go outdoors because they're going to be invasive. So red wrigglers are surface dwellers and they eat as they go, whereas the worms that are out naturalized to our environment are more deeper dwellers, and they kind of come up to get their food and then they go back down. But red wrigglers are surface dwellers, and so they're really great for composting. They can eat 1/2 of their body weight per day, and they need grit in their gizzards to help them digest. And that just means having some soil around. They like to eat the tiny bacteria and mold growing on surface of food sources. So that really bad strawberry in that big bunch, they will love it. They will love eating that. So it's pretty easy to create your own worm bin if you are interested. There are people who also sell worm bins or worm chalets or worm houses. They have different names for it. But if you want to create one of your own, you can buy those gallons from Home Depot, the orange ones, and you can put in some holes on the bottom. This is just for water to drain out. So you want to use a small kind of hole piercing thing. Sometimes you can use a knife, or I just use this little, I forgot what the name is, but basically I got something that was pointy, and I got a hammer, and I hammered it until there was a hole. There were multiple holes in the bottom of this Home Depot container. And then I wet some newspaper, and this has to be newspaper that is not glossy. This has to be newspaper that can be recycled and is easily decomposable. So when you wet it and you tear it, if it tears easily, then it's good to go. So you wet it a little bit, put it at the bottom of the Home Depot container, and then you can put in some soil and then add in your worms. And you may be wondering, where do I get red wriggler worms? And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So once you've added your worms, you want to let them acclimatize to that environment for a day before you start feeding them. But in order to feed them, you just dig a hole in one area of the bin and you add the food waste, which is chopped up. So regularly I would have banana peels. So chop them up, put it into the worm bin, and then cover it with soil and newspaper / napkin. So the reason why you cover it up is because you don't want fruit flies and other organisms to start be attracted to that area. It's not so much for the worms. They'll eat anything, whether it's on the surface or underneath the soil. And then you leave that for 4 to 5 days before adding more food and get them used to the kind of diet that you have. And then add the next portion of food to a different area, so you're getting them to migrate. And then as they're getting used to it, then you can feed them more regularly, but you still don't want to feed them every day because they want darkness. So you want to give them that 1 or 2 or 3 days to just feed and then give them more food. So where to get red wrigglers? You can contact local resources like Kathy's Crawley Composters. She just loves red wrigglers, has a whole farm of them, and she has really cool other things too that are red wriggler related, like vermi humor. So she's someone that you can get red wrigglers from, certified. And but you can also find local sellers on Kijiji who have their own worm bins. And because you're continuing to feed worms and they continue to grow and populate, people will have too many worms. So there might be local sellers or just general people who are looking to give away worms. And that's it for my presentation. I added the any questions just so you can put them in the chat. And of course, we'll take them up afterwards. Thank you so much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shefaza. I really, really was interested in that. I had never wanted to think about using worms in my own home, but now I think I would think about it. So that's really interesting. Thank you. And then lastly, for the last 15-minute portion, we're going to welcome Alicia from Worth Mending up to talk about upcycling textiles and how to mend clothes. Oh, I don't think that we can hear you, Alicia. We're having the issue again. It's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
perfect. My microphone just turned off. No worries. Alrighty. So I just have, okay, good. That's in place. Everything is in place. Everything is in place. Alrighty. I didn't put together a big fancy PowerPoint for you. I don't know what I was thinking. Of course, that's like the natural thing to do for a Zoom conference like this. But you're just gonna have to look at my face a little bit. I'm really sorry. And I have some pictures that I'm going to show you. I was thinking about bringing some samples of stuff that I've mended, but you can tell my microphone or my camera is not the greatest. So I'm going to show you pictures. So look forward to that. I'm Alicia. I like they them pronouns, and I have a business that I call Worth Mending, where I do lots of visible mending and upcycling, and try to just do my best to make the planet suck a little bit less. I don't know. I have always been really drawn to like creative pursuits and making stuff, and I could never like it feels like a big responsibility that I also take on, because I can't justify. I'm sure this resonates with the crowd a little bit because we're here for the zero waste talk, but I can't justify, I can't reconcile like purchasing new fabrics when I know that there's so much out there that we're just not using. So repurposing textiles is super duper important. When I realized that I could just like really lean into that and make it my thing, it opened up so many creative possibilities for me. So I'm just very grateful for however that came into my life. I kind of got into mending for the art of it, even though I haven't been like a big visible mender since I was a kid all the way through. But my earliest memory of visible mending was in like grade 6 or 7. I had these pale cotton, like probably from, I don't know, Jacob or something, or like whatever, these pale cotton capri pants, and I changed out all the buttons on them for funner ones because I don't want like beige buttons. There were red ones and whatever else. And so I put more interesting ones on them and added fun stitching to close holes. But unfortunately, I don't think anyone in my family actually had any skills that in mending that they were like readily going to pass on to me. So at some point I was really sad that the pants were they're too worn out and I had to get rid of them. I actually, a follow-up memory is in high school, I thrifted around like trying to fill that hole and like find another pair of pants that would like, be like my visible mending project. But I didn't have that language for it then, obviously. But I didn't find anything. And it's been like a solid 2 decades, and I somehow still remember these stories. And since I got into visible mending more, they really fuel my desire to cherish the clothing that I have and to make it my own with visible mending. Because, when we're all buying our clothes off of the same racks, it's nice to be able to develop like a personal style through mending as well. So the skills that I have today are definitely informed by some of those early experiments, but it's kind of cheesy to say maybe, but maybe not, because it's 2021 and this is what we do. But it's really the like hashtag visible mending. When I discovered that, it was super exciting to realize that like there are other people out there besides all my very, very, very cool like hippie punk anarchist friends who are out there making their clothing into art. So I'm gonna spend the next 10 minutes that I have trying to fumble through some maybe statistics or maybe some like kind of bummer stories and stuff that I've largely gleaned from this really cool podcast who I found out about through Instagram and Visible Mending and all of that stuff. It's called Clothes Horse podcast. I didn't do a master's degree in any of this, but it's something that is just a big interest and a passion of mine. So, you know, the waste involved in the fashion industry is like just unfathomable. Like it's massive, and the waste and what happens to all of that waste is somehow like even more incomprehensible. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but there are resources out there if you would like to learn more. For me, it is motivating to like learn some of that bigger picture stuff and see where my project fits into that and is trying to challenge some of these narratives. And you're also here because you're interested in breaking those habits and learning to live a lower impact lifestyle. So I'm hoping you're at least a little bit like me and will find it helpful to learn some about this as you are continuing on your zero waste, low waste sort of journey. Mending and just buying less of our stuff new wherever we can. Something that it's funny, I've one of my good friends, you know, she doesn't really buy much secondhand, but buys a lot of outdoor gear secondhand. And for me, it was the exact opposite. I buy like everything secondhand, but I found myself like always reaching for a brand new raincoat. And so I was out looking for a raincoat. I bought one from MEC and I hated it and the fit was bad and whatever, but like I bought it because it was like the most affordable one. And then yeah, she was like, just look on Kijiji. And I found, anyway, that's like such a sidetrack and I don't have a lot of time, but like you can find so much secondhand because there's just so much stuff in the world. It's absolutely like unfathomable. And so, you know, these things like Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace or eBay or like Poshmark or Depop or all of these places that you can find clothing secondhand, obviously like it takes a little bit more time to sift through racks at a thrift shop or like browse for stuff if you're, you know, there's tons of challenges there, but just doing what we can to buy like just a little bit less brand new makes a chip in the massive situation that we've got going on. You know, and it's another kind of curveball that we get thrown is the idea of, we talked a little bit about in the other presentations about greenwashing and how brands latch on to these sustainability trends, call things natural and all these things that really don't mean anything, and they're maintaining the same hyper destructive core values, and that's not going to make the changes. It takes real intentional mindful effort and community support like this support, I guess it's also sport but real community support to build those better consumer habits. Something that Amanda from Clotheshorse says sometimes is friends don't let friends fall for greenwashing. So again, it's super cool that you're all here for this, and I don't think I'm gonna have time is very tricky. I'm going to flip through. I'm going to try and share my screen with you. So let's see how that goes, and show you some of the mending that I've done. I don't think that I'll be able to like really show you how to mend anything in this time frame, but I'll show you and talk through some of the skills that are like very, very basic sewing skills that you can use to really extend the life of your clothing. Okay, what have we here? I'm going to press the share screen button. Alrighty. And I hope that you are now looking at a blue plaid shirt.
Yes, we can see it.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Excellent. So this is a shirt that actually belongs to my partner, and it's had lots of different surgeries over the years, but you can see the heart shape that is a patch, and there's just an abstract shape over on the other side. And this is an example of the heart shape is just where the shirt was snagged, and so the whole at the time was kind of just an anomaly within the rest of the shirt. It was the rest of the fabric wasn't that worn out. I just had to put a patch where where there was a rip. And so it doesn't cover. You can see that the like dotted line around that heart, that's called a running stitch, and it's the most basic stitch in sewing. And it does great at like attaching two pieces of fabric flat to each other where they're not going to be expected. It's not like the seam that you see over on the left side there at the side of the shirt. That's going to be under a lot more force than something that I'd want to attach with those running stitches. So I also used a whip stitch around the edge. Those are the like lines that are all lined up around the heart. And I use that to just secure that edge so that it doesn't fray too much. And it's also decorative. There's a lot of crossover between embroidery stitches that you'll use just for purely decorative purposes and stuff that you'll find useful in mending. Over to that other little abstract patch, I used the exact same stitches again. So a whip stitch and a running stitch are two that are just indispensable. And you can see that I did a lot of just parallel rows of running stitches. And that's because here, you'll have to do your own investigating on the garment that you're repairing. But here I could see that the fabric was worn quite thin and required a patch on the whole back of it. I'm going to flip past this one pretty quickly because the techniques I'm going to show on some other slides, but this is another top. It's wool and it was moth-eaten, and all of these different little doodles used to be a hole. So this was another like art project that is a mend. I've got a couple slides here coming up about looking at mending denim, and I like to use often a combination of hand stitching, and machine stitching when I'm doing denim, because again, it's typically going to be a heavier weight textile. And take it from me, repetitive stress injuries in sewing and mending are super real. So just don't just give yourself a break if you feel like anything is starting to hurt. Over on the right hand side, I did some of those lines by machine, and then the ones that are just outlining the rip that I tucked under there, that was done by hand. And then the leaf over on the left hand side was entirely patched on with a machine, and you can still make it look real cool, which is obviously the goal in visual mending. I've got some more jeans here. So this is another just a rip that I reinforced with some machine stitches. And for me, I don't tend to go often for just a completely invisible, perfect mend, because I think it adds character to the piece. And it's also kind of a conversation starter too. If anyone dares to ask you, like, why are you wearing clothes with, that visible wear showing, you can talk to them about why. Can we go to the next one, please? This is just another example of how I used that whip stitch and the running stitch to reinforce this pair of jeans. The way I did this is the hole there. I used the backside of that denim because I'm sure anyone who's looked at a pair of jeans thoroughly, you notice that a lot of the time it's lighter on the inside. So I just used that for a little bit more of a decorative effect. I really don't have too much time left. I just want to flip really quickly to this little guy here. So darning is another just completely, it's very essential skill if you want to do things like socks or sweaters. Sweaters I've done as well using that same like whip stitch, running stitch combination. And darning you can do freehand, and it's great. And I don't have any descriptions of it here. I'm sorry. Sorry. This is what we call the Swift darning loom. and I shouldn't have saved it to the end because it's kind of the star of my show. My partner and I redesigned a vintage tool using all repurposed material, or largely repurposed material. We use repurposed hardwood, and then the hooks that you see are made from bicycle spokes. And I've got some videos if you find me on like YouTube or Instagram or wherever about how this works, but effectively it like keeps all of your threads nice and organized and makes it a lot easier to get that nice over under pattern when you're darning. And so I use it often to do socks or add little patch pockets to things. And it's been a whole journey designing and creating this little tool, and it's awesome. You should check it out. And that's my 15 minutes. So I'm sorry for the very, very abrupt ending, but yeah, I'm gonna just unshare my screen or something. Yes, just showing my face just as I leave. Yeah, it's again, just the whole idea of like mending and upcycling has really fueled my creativity a whole bunch, because it's amazing to be able to be creative and also not, or try not to, in the best ways that I can, contribute to all of the intense stuff that we just are doing to the planet. It's unfathomable, but like we just have to do what we can with all of this like lower waist stuff. Just trying to like do what we can and not judge ourselves or shame ourselves for the ways that we have to engage in the world, because it's not our fault. It is our problem, but it's not our fault. And just by showing up here and showing an interest in the Zero Waste Challenge and changing our habits together is totally going to make an impact. Great. Thank you.
Awesome, Alicia. Thank you so much. It's also so cool that you made your own loom with your partner. That's awesome. Like,
yeah, we're like very, very intense about DIY in this house.
hey, that is super cool, and that means that you fit in with the zero waste crowd super well, and that's kind of the whole part of your business. So thank you for sharing, and it's totally okay that you didn't have a fancy PowerPoint. I think the pictures really added an extra element of just seeing how cool that more hand stitched and machine stitched mending can actually look. It can be quite fashionable, right?
I think so. And it really, as I was saying, it just personalizes our wardrobes in a way that like you can't get on the shelf. Totally.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're going to open up the question period now. I'm going to get all the panelists, so Shefaza and Patricia, just to turn your cameras on for the last 10-ish minutes. And we're just going to do some rapid fire questions. I see that MJ has her hand up, so I'm going to let MJ ask in the chat. I do know that there is a question here that MJ has asked already, and I'm assuming that's probably what this is from. But MJ is saying to Alicia, the patch is a really neat idea. Is the patch something you bought, or did you create it yourself?
I'm not exactly sure which patch you're talking about, but I definitely created it myself. I don't think that I have time to go into tons of detail on it here, but using like clothes that are way too worn out, I use those to make patches. I try to choose something that's like a similar weight and stretch and feel to the original textile, just so that it doesn't like feel horrible to wear the thing once it's mended. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I have one question for Patricia, and this is about, so deodorant is kind of like that really tough thing in the zero waste world that I myself have struggled with. Based on kind of what you were saying about making your own deodorant, it doesn't sound like, especially somebody as clumsy as me, probably would not be a good idea to make deodorant. Is there zero waste brands or types of deodorant that you would suggest based on your own experience? Or do you just use regular deodorant, and that is kind of that one place where you've done the most you can in other areas, and that's just one place where you buy just regular store-bought deodorant? Because I'm at a loss now, and I'm like, I don't know where to turn.
Thanks for the question. I do know Zero Waste Bulk has a bulk deodorant. I've never used it before, but I'm sure if you chatted with the staff there, they'd be familiar with that. I tend to try and use more natural, I'm not even using the word natural now, ones that are more natural and, you know, they're just a little bit more like plant-based and less synthetic things. And I try and avoid like aluminum and some of those things, but I've tried lots of the natural ones too, and they're very hit or miss too. But I think that's similar with just deodorants in general. You just gotta find something that works for you. And I saw that MJ just said, "Have you tried a crystal deodorant?" I have no idea what that sounds, but it sounds very fun.
It's a really interesting type of deodorant. My mom actually uses one, ironically, and I don't. Yeah, it's literally like it looks like an egg, but it is a rock and it is just salt. I don't know if it's just salt or if it's a mixture of like salt and something else. But I have a lot of people that swear by crystal deodorant. But then again, it also depends. I think what you did really well in your presentation, Patricia, is that you kind of showed that not every type of skin and every type of body is going to react same to the same products. Great. So we're going to move to a question from Liza. What do you think about the Dove reusable container deodorant, which I've never heard of before?
I also never heard of that too, but if it's reusable, does that mean you can get it refilled? Is there like little things you pop in? But I'm intrigued by that. But I think any way to reduce the amount of plastic. Oh, yeah, any way to reduce the amount of plastic. And if it works for you and you think that there is evidence that, you know, you don't have to buy a full new holding thing, then that might be the way to go for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think as well, another important part about sustainability that I think everybody touched on is just doing what you can with what you have. Because the important part about sustainability is that we all have different access to sustainability. We all have different homes that we live in that will allow us to have vermicomposting or not. We all have different access to clothes or not. We all have different access to different types of ingredients or not. So I think everybody did a really good job of just saying, do what you can. And if there are some things that, you know, right now you can't implement into your life, you can take that as a learning for future. Like that's what we do in our zero waste challenge, right? It's more of a learning experience rather than really challenging yourself to make sure that you don't fill up your jar. It's about learning where your consumption comes from and how maybe you can change that maybe next year when you do this zero waste challenge. Emily's asking, does the Swift darn that heal?
You're muted, but I did see the question. I do see the question in the chat. And I have used it to darn the heel of a sock. The thing with mine is that the work surface is, I should have one here, but I don't, is flat. So you have to keep that in mind in terms of like how much of the heel you're trying to darn at a time. Because doing a freehand darn, often people will use something like an orange or a light bulb or a tennis ball or a mending mushroom to do that and maintain that curvature of the heel. So it takes some experimenting. It's possible. There are other spots on the sock that it tends to work easier, but I've definitely done it.
It sounds like you're a very experienced mender, so I'm not surprised that you can do that. I definitely would not be able to. Awesome. Okay, so I think that answers all of the questions that everybody has. I will obviously keep the chat open as people are leaving if anybody has any last minute comments or questions, but that's the end of the presentations. I want to thank our panelists so much for showing up and I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure that the attendees got a lot out of it. For the attendees, we will have a copy of the presentation, the videos, and all the resources left with an email that comes after this event. So you will be able to look back if there was anything, because it was only an hour and we were learning a lot. So we want to make sure that everybody has access to all of the information. But for those who came to the event, thank you so much. For those who are taking a zero waste challenge, whether it be a 30-day or a 7-day, good luck, enjoy the learning process. And for those who aren't in the zero waste challenge, the 7-day challenge is still open for registration. So it's always there. But yes, have a great night, everybody. Thank you again to the panelists, and good luck being more zero waste. You got this. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.